Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined, as I am every Tuesday, by Andrew Erickson. Erickson, we're into week 5, a month into the 2025 NFL season. It's not going well for my Ravens. It's going pretty okay for my fantasy team. How are you feeling here a month in?
I'm feeling better than the Titans, I would say, and how Cam Ward described how his team is doing through 4 weeks. But like you said, yeah, we're a quarter way through the NFL season, which is crazy to think about.
Not technically. There's 17 games, not 16. So it's not a quarter, but just need to correct you there mathematically.
And a third, 30%.
No, it's like less. It's less than a quarter. We are almost a quarter of the way through the season.
Regardless,
right.
It's going to be October very, very soon. Probably when you're listening to this, potentially it will be October, fall season. And this is when teams start to kind of emerge from the pack. We hear this a lot from coaches that the NFL season really doesn't start till October because you see a lot of teams treat the first couple of weeks like an extended preseason. So I think we're going to see more teams kind of emerge, take form, and see the contenders kind of rise to the top, and then the pretenders contend to pretend.
So if the season doesn't start till October, what you're saying is the year isn't over for the Ravens already, as I've been saying it is. So that's encouraging to hear.
That division's not that tough.
I know. But at a certain point, I think Bill Simmons always talks about the year from hell team. Like at a certain point, it is just there's nothing you can do. 7 out of their 11 defensive starters are already out for multiple weeks, if not the season, for some of them.
Next man up.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. Nobody wants to hear me complain about the Ravens. This is our running back show. We do split the show into 2 parts. So we're going to do our week 5 kind of running back buys and sells, for this first part. Second part, which you can check out on YouTube and on audio, wherever you listen to your podcast, will be wide receivers and then sprinkling in a little bit of quarterback and tight end as well. We're going to skip we usually do a macro level kind of 30,000 foot view strategy talk from Erickson. We're going to skip that because we had 2 Monday night games this week and it just gets to be really overloaded. And these aren't really games you can skip over. There's like pretty compelling, news coming out of both of these games. So we're going to skip that kind of high level advice here for this week. That'll be back next week. We are going to dive into a Monday Night Football reaction with the doubleheader. We'll start with the first game, which was Jets at Dolphins. Dolphins win 27-21. I don't know if there's other stuff you had wanted to talk about with this. The clear big takeaway, obviously, is Tyreek Hill. Really, crushing injury, obviously. One of those injuries that's hard to watch, hard to see the replay of, just looks really, really bad. And they've already said, it's a dislocated knee, multiple ligament tears, including an ACL. He's going to be out for the season. So he's somebody that you and I were both maybe not the highest on throughout draft season. Tyreek Hill, that fading of him never fully kind of realized itself in terms of us being really high on the rest of the Dolphins. You have always liked Jalen Waddle, but that was really it. Now that Tyreek Hill is completely out of the picture, are you feeling like you want to really get aggressive with Jalen Waddle? Are you feeling like, hey, a couple of touchdowns for Darren Waller is, his first game back in the NFL? He's now somebody that's really worth going after. Is it a guy lower on the totem pole like Malik Washington that you think is going to see a big boost? Where do you first look, Erickson, when you say, okay, Tyreek Hill not in the picture for this passing game anymore? Who benefits most?
I think from just a role perspective and who's just going to play more, it's probably Malik Washington. That's the guy that Mike McDaniel has been scheming up touches throughout this season. And it's someone that I talked about a lot in the Beyond the Waiver Wire article, just about, hey, if the team moves on from Hill, then Malik Washington would see his role substantially increase. They love getting the ball into his hands with these short area targets. He's great after the catch. He's effective on special teams. So I think Malik Washington is a really talented second-year wide receiver. I think he's going to see the biggest role boost. Now, from a target perspective, Jalen Waddle, again, this wasn't the idea behind the play for Waddle. It was more about, well, what if the team trades away Tyreek Hill, that maybe Waddle could have a biggest boost? Now, injury is obviously a different situation. But, now it's kind of put up or shut up for Waddle, right? He's got the opportunity on a silver platter. He has to deliver in this spot. And even though this past game wasn't face-melting in any capacity, I think that Hill was actually more productive than Jalen Waddle was, even though he didn't play a lot, basically in the second half. So I think that Waddle maybe might be an interesting buy just because he didn't pop in this particular matchup, but we've seen the sample size of Waddle without Tyreek Hill. It's not that massive. There's only been 3 games before the last night's game that Waddle had played without Tyreek Hill in the lineup or like playing less than 50% of the snaps. And in those games, he averaged 9 targets and 85 receiving yards per game. So like we've seen the ceiling for Waddle, and now this is the time for him to show up. So if you have him, you're happy that he has this opportunity now for him to be the number one receiver in this offense. If you don't have him, I think it's worth kicking the tires on the Waddle manager and seeing what you can get him for. And not my league because I have Jalen Waddle on all my teams. so this is just kind of the hand that I've been dealt, and I'm just going to roll with it. Keep Waddle on my team and kind of see where it goes.
He's wide receiver 30 in the consensus rest of season rankings. Now, the game just happened last night, so that might update later on in the week. Where do you think that's going to end up?
Much higher. I mean, he's definitely going to be the top 24. I mean, an interesting trade that you could potentially see this week is Waddle or Chase, like rest of the season.
Wow, yeah.
Like that's now probably a conversation. People are going to be like, oh, someone sent me Chase for Waddle or vice versa. And you have to, it's not one of those auto rejects anymore. It's, wait a minute, let me take a step back and think about this.
Yeah. Devon Achane had 20 carries last night. He only had 1 catch for 2 yards. Do you think his passing game workload will go up without Tyreek?
I think that it'll probably go back to what it's been. I mean, this was the rare occasion where the Dolphins were actually playing with a lead. So I think that probably played into part of why they were able to run the ball a little bit more than have to rely on Achane as a receiver. I would expect that they're going to be trailing in most of their games because their defense is absolutely terrible. That may not be the case next week. They're playing the Carolina Panthers, but Achane should be more than effective as a rusher in that matchup, and anything you get as a boost from the targets, I think will obviously benefit Achane.
You very disappointingly in part 2 of the show do not pick Darren Waller as your tight end to sell or buy. We could have gone either direction, I suppose. I was highly disappointed in you. But coming off this 2-touchdown game, and now obviously there's this big opening in the passing game, would you rather have for the rest of the season Darren Waller or the guy on the other side of the field in this game, Mason Taylor, who had 5 catches for 65 yards, in just his 4th game here in the NFL?
Probably have Mason Taylor. I think that the Waller thing is, yes, he caught the touchdowns. That's probably going to be his role. He's going to remain a red zone target for this offense. But from a consistent targets perspective and just from a health perspective, I mean, I don't think the talent with Waller's really ever been in question. It's just about the guy being healthy. And yes, he was healthy in this particular game after he had missed all the other weeks and like all of training camp with injuries. So if I'm making a bet on long term, yes, maybe Waller outscores Taylor again because he's facing the Panthers in week 5, but Mason Taylor's facing the Cowboys. That defense is terrible. So Mason Taylor I just think is probably a better long-term bet and someone I'd rather invest. But if you're talking from a DFS 1 week perspective, Waller catches a touchdown again, that wouldn't surprise me.
Any other thoughts on the Jets side of this one? I mean, it pretty much played out as I expected it to against a defense like Miami. Like Fields was good. He also ran a lot and had 2 combined touchdowns. Garrett Wilson, 82 yards and a touchdown, just continues to be awesome despite, historically subpar quarterback play. A little bit better last night though. Like I mentioned, Mason Taylor. Braylon Allen had the fumble at the goal line that everybody wished had gone to Breece Hall. But were there any kind of Jets notes that you had on the side? Or I felt like it just kind of played out the way I expected, at least.
Well, the fact that Braylon Allen did get hurt, I think that matters significantly for Breece Hall's value moving forward, because if he's not going to be playing the next couple of weeks or whatever the extent of his injury is, well, those goal line touches are no longer going to go to Braylon Allen. Like, they're going to go back to Breece Hall, because I wouldn't assume that Isaiah Davis would overtake that role. So I think that's good for Breece Hall. I don't believe Breece Hall scored a touchdown yet this season. You might want to just double check me on that. But Braylon Allen's gotten a lot of those red zone carries this season. And if he's out of the picture, then those will go to Breece Hall. So I think this is a stock up for Breece Hall, who I think has looked fantastic when the Jets offense has been able to function. And like we talked about earlier, they're facing the Dallas Cowboys next week. So that is a great matchup for Breece Hall to be used not only as a rusher, but as a receiver. And then you have the touchdown upside amplified if there is no Braylon Allen.
Hall has not scored a touchdown this year. Yeah, I know in the past they have liked Davis, so I guess I'm just not, like, in the moment, obviously, they were like, okay, we'll just go with Hall, when the injury happens during the game. I wonder if we will see, maybe not necessarily at the goal line, but if we'll just see Davis get more workload than we're hoping for, after a full week of practice and when they kind of game plan with a new look backfield, assuming Allen, have they said anything about how long Allen will be out? I haven't seen anything if they have.
I haven't seen anything about the follow-up to the injury, but once he got hurt, he was ruled out of the game very quickly and did not return.
That's usually a bad sign. Yeah.
It wasn't a pretty injury. I think that I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to speculate, so we'll get the news, but just there is a possibility that Allen is going to miss games.
Yeah, it's seems like a strong guess at this point. So yeah, if that really does all fall on Breece and Davis's workload doesn't increase, then yeah, that'll be only wheels up for Breece Hall. Let's go to the other Monday night game, 28-3, Denver Broncos over the Cincinnati Bengals. A couple different angles we could hit on this one. I guess the first one I want to start with the negative is just like the Bengals in general. Like, is this just like literally trade them for a bucket of footballs, like literally whatever you can get for any of these guys, or are you saying, I know Jake Browning has looked bad. I know the offense has looked bad. It has come against the Vikings in Minnesota and the Broncos in Denver. There might be brighter days ahead for Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown and company, or is it just like if you can get anything for them, you're trying to get out of the Bengals business?
I think that the point that you made about the matchups is really key here because it was two of the, I think, top 10 defenses in the NFL in their houses on the road. And when you look at Jake Browning, what he did historically in 2023, he was significantly better at home than on the road. Where did they play the Jaguars? When Jake Browning had the confidence game where we thought, okay, maybe this can work, it was at home. So you just need to forget about these last two games because this is the bottom of this Bengals offense. I think that it's going to get significantly better when they play at home than on the road. And they're playing the Lions at home this week. Again, the Lions defense has been better, I would say, but it's a matchup that you're expecting there to be points. It has a massive total, and I like the Bengals to kind of bounce back a little bit here with their back at home. So Jake Browning, in 2023, when he was making all of his starts, the first time that Joe Burrow got hurt, his first two starts, he was terrible. He scored under 20 fantasy points. The next six games after that, he ripped off 21-plus fantasy points on all 6 games. So I think right now, you want to go buy Ja'Marr Chase, just because you can get him for pennies on the dollar. And I do expect that he's not going to be held down to these types of numbers every single week. Just look back at the Jaguars box score. That was a game that Jake Browning played the majority of, and Ja'Marr Chase was fine because he saw 1 billion targets. Now, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, those guys are going to be way more boom or bust. So, yes, they could have a boom game here and there. And then I would probably try to sell those players. But for me, this is really rock bottom for the Bengals.
So, interestingly, Chase Brown is down, and this is in our rest of season consensus rankings that I'm looking. Chase Brown is down at RB19. I expect that to actually get a little lower. T. Higgins is down in the wide receiver 30s, but Ja'Marr Chase hasn't fallen that much. In our rest of season consensus rankings, he's still wide receiver 2. Now, I find that very surprising that Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Jackson Smith and Jigba, CeeDee Lamb will be back in a couple of weeks, Drake London. These guys are all still below Chase despite what the offenses looks like. Puka is the only player that has jumped ahead of him at this point. So, I think you are right when I think about anecdotally and just the leagues I'm in, like what would it take to get Chase right now? It does feel like pennies on the dollar compared to what it was before the start of the season. But the way it's being ranked, it might not be that cheap. What do you make of that?
I think that it's just a matter of trying to balance the market value on Chase while also valuing where he should actually be ranked rest of season. Because that's something you have to consider when you're making these rest of season rankings, where you're doing it where you would draft these players when they would, if we had to redraft all the players today. Then you also have to capture, well, what's the market sentiment? So the market sentiment is obviously really low on the Bengals. So I think that this is capturing more of, hey, this Bengals offense is going to bounce back based on Chase's higher ranking rest of season, and maybe still that we're still getting some updates as that was a Monday night game, so it was a little bit later on. This especially was the second Monday night game, so maybe that does alter a little bit, so make sure you go check out the rest of season rankings on FantasyPros.com. But that's kind of the way I would lean for it. I don't think that he's probably going to be drafted as the number 2 receiver off the board if we were redrafting teams right now. I probably wouldn't rank him that high. But I think that's still I think the ceiling case for him still exists on a week-to-week basis. Like, Ja'Marr Chase can win you your week if he is ripping off yards after the catch, seeing 15, 16 targets in a game, which is still in his range of outcomes on a weekly basis. So, look, Chase has had bad games with Joe Burrow before, where he's just kind of dudded out. And then the next week he goes out and has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns because he's just that talented of a player. So, the fact that they're playing the Lions also are dealing with injuries in their secondary. Their 2 starting quarterbacks got hurt last week, Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed. So I think that this is a prime bounce back spot for Ja'Marr Chase, and this is probably the cheapest that you'll be able to try to acquire him if you want to take on that type of risk.
Broncos were in total control of this game the entire night. J.K. Dobbins, 16 carries, 101 yards. First 100-yard rusher for the Broncos since Latavius Murray. R.J. Harvey had a very good game. His best game here as a rookie. 14 carries, just 58 yards, but he also had 4 catches for 40 yards and a wide open touchdown. Cortland Sutton, 81 yards and a touchdown, his usual self. Bo Nix, really looking the best, and that was against a Bengals defense that's really bad, but looking the best he has here in his sophomore season. What was your biggest takeaway in the Broncos side? I mean, it feels to me like the biggest standout unit is the running game here. And I don't know that this really portends anything for Harvey moving forward, just because they were up by so much. So, of course, they were going to let, they weren't going to overwork any one running back. But Harvey did look good.
He also outtouched Dobbins. Like, he had 19 touches to Dobbins' 17.
Yeah, but my point is that, like, in a blowout game, like, if they view Dobbins as the 1 and Harvey as the 2, like, it makes sense that they would give the carries to the younger guy, just get him some reps when they didn't care about the game. Like, or do you think that will be reflective of what we see going forward?
Well, I think that they were still using both running backs throughout the game. This wasn't Harvey got a bunch of carries in, like, the fourth quarter. Like, yes, he did score the touchdown at the end of the game when he was wide open, but it's not like that was the first time he was being used. He had more. He's had better receiving usage than Dobbins all season long. Whether it's targets, whether it's routes run, Harvey has been the preferred guy catching passes out of the backfield over J.K. Dobbins. And I don't want to, like, praise Harvey and then knock Dobbins, because Dobbins has been absolutely fantastic too, especially where you drafted him. Like, both of these running backs, especially Dobbins, like, he's been a weekly starter given the matchups. But what do we always talk about with Dobbins is we know that he's not meant or built for the long run, right? We know he starts out the season fantastic, but I have to check my notes, but I don't know, has he actually played a full season ever in his NFL career? Like, it doesn't happen for J.K. Dobbins. So if his production starts to tail off, would that really surprise anybody? I don't think so. And if it's coming at the expense of, or as we start to see Harvey continue to rise in this backfield, I mean, I thought Harvey looked fantastic in this game. Again, Dobbins also looked really good, but Harvey's role is continuing to grow. He played 41% of the snaps. J.K. Dobbins was at 44%. So again, I'm looking for opportunities to sell high on J.K. Dobbins. That's still how I feel about this backfield, and I want to buy R.J. Harvey. Again, don't sell for nothing, because Dobbins has, like, he's a great start. If you just want to hold him and, like, till the wheels fall off, I think that's fine too. But when we're talking about this backfield in, like, a month, I think Harvey's probably going to have more value at that point.
J.K. Dobbins was drafted in 2020. He's played, last night was his 41st game in this is his 6th season since being drafted. Obviously, it's only the 5th season he's played because he missed an entire year. But yeah, 41st game in 6 potential seasons worth of games to that point. All right, we got to jump into our running backs, buys, and sells, because that was our longest Monday Night Football reaction we've ever had.
It was a doubleheader. So
I was going to say, thanks to the NFL for the doubleheader. Appreciate that. Let's jump into your first running back to buy.
I'm going to go with Trey Benson, running back for the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think that he gave anybody the production that we kind of expected in his first game without James Conner playing on Thursday night against a pretty good, I would say tougher matchup in the Seattle Seahawks. I still liked what I saw from Benson. He played 55% of the snaps in his first start. He outtouched the next closest running back, DeMarcado, by 13-4. So I think that because he kind of delivered somewhat of a dud, again, he only had 40 yards on 13 touches, scoreless yards. I think that makes him a great buy low, because I think that we get carried away sometimes with that first start for that new running back that's coming in for the starter. And we get carried away. And if they don't deliver, well, he's a bust. It didn't work. It's not going to work for Benson. He's not going to be James Conner. I think that we could have seen, if James Conner played in this game, he probably would have struggled too. So I think that Benson is a prime buy low candidate. Again, you have a good matchup this week with the Cardinals playing back at home as really heavy favorites. So I like Benson. I like to bet on explosive pass catching running backs. Like Benson, even in that game against Seattle, still heavily involved as a receiver. And as a rusher this season, Benson is second in the NFL at rushing yards over expected per attempt. So he's ripping off big plays when he gets chances, he catches passes, and he's the lead back on a Cardinals offense that I think is at least average. So I like buying Trey Benson.
I can't remember where I saw this, so I can't give credit to whoever tweeted it. But I saw somebody tweet, if James Conner was healthy and had the exact usage and stat line that Trey Benson did in this game against a defense like the Seahawks, we would all be sitting here today saying James Conner is a buy low. So the fact that it's just Trey Benson instead of James Conner, like, just slide him right in there because we saw the usage that we were hoping for. I think the other thing that maybe throws people off a little is that DeMercado had the touchdown catch in that game. And so just because only one of those running backs got in the end zone and it wasn't Trey Benson, that might kind of raise eyebrows or scare people off a little. I really don't think it should. Like, it's not even like a pass game usage thing. Like, Trey Benson had more targets and catches than DeMercado too. It just so happened that it wasn't the one for the touchdown. I agree. Like, I think there will be better matchups ahead. I think the usage was really encouraging. My only real hesitation on Trey Benson is just like the Cardinals offense as a whole. Like, I'm just kind of done with Kyler, and like I just worry about what the ceiling of the offense is in general and how many scoring opportunities and, you know, open lanes and everything there will be for Benson. But outside of that, like, the usage wise, and I like the talent, like, I think it's a great buy low.
Well, I think that your Kyler point is the reason why it makes it that much of a buy low, because teams and players just get sick of the Cardinals sometimes. And I was very particular with my words. I said average offense. I didn't say top 10 offense. I said Cardinals, I think, are an average offense. They play in a dome, so usually get some higher scoring games there. And it's not a bottom 10 offense, even when Kyler is really inconsistent. Maybe that's a reason to lean more on the run game, lean more on Trey Benson, who we know can make a lot of big plays.
Let's go to your next buy running back.
Yeah, this guy is very, very divisive. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, running back for the Washington Commanders. So the last 2 weeks, we've been out without Jaden Daniels, and we've also seen Chris Rodriguez kind of lead the Commanders' backfield since the injuries to Austin Eckler. So this past week, the snaps were tied. It was 35% for both Croskey-Merritt and Chris Rodriguez. Rodriguez had the big 48-yard rush in the first half, but besides that, he did not do a lot in that game. Again, he was the majority lead back in the first half, outtouched JCM 4-1, also earned the most red zone touches. But like I said, the snap rate was tied at the end of the game. Croskey-Merritt got more involved in the second half, and I still think that Croskey-Merritt has the highest chance of actually taking over this backfield when it's all said and done. You look at how efficient he's been this year on the ground. He leads the NFL in rushing success rate at 55%, 5.9 yards per carry. More than half the time JCM touches the ball, he's getting a successful rushing attempt. Whereas Chris Rodriguez, yes, he's had a couple of big runs. He's bottom 5 in success rate on a down-to-down basis. So more often than not, when they're giving the ball to Rodriguez, it's actually a negative play for the offense. His success rate's at 22%, which is bottom 5 this season. So every time I watch a Commanders game or rewatch one of these games, they talk about how high they are on Croskey-Merritt. I get that it's been probably a slower burn than most of us anticipated, but he's still a 7th-round pick, and he's still a rookie. So I just think that his role is going to continue to grow here, and I kind of just want to push my chips in and bet against Chris Rodriguez being, he's going to be the guy, because over the last 2 weeks, yeah, they had a chance to make him the guy and turn the backfield over to Chris Rodriguez, and they haven't really done that. They've kind of like left the door open for Croskey-Merritt just enough where I still feel like he can grab the keys to this backfield, and maybe we see the splits a little bit different when Jaden Daniels eventually returns. So for me, Croskey-Merritt, because you can get him, I mean, he's free at this point, I think. I feel like it doesn't take a lot to get him, and I like the long-term upside of a player that I think is just, he's the best running back on the Commanders, and this offense should be better when Jaden Daniels returns.
Throw out a name for me, because I was going to ask that. You just said now that he's like basically free. What actually do you think it would take to get him right now?
It probably does depend on when the person drafted Croskey-Merritt. If they was one of these, I drafted him in the 4th round, Croskey-Merritt, then you're probably not going to get him for cheaper. But if he's a 10th round Croskey-Merritt,
what would you trade for him in Dynasty? Would you like a 2nd round rookie pick for next year? Maybe that could be helpful framing just to think about value.
See, Dynasty's trickier because he could get replaced by a running back the Commanders just decide to draft next year. So I'm probably more hesitant about him because he's following like the kind of like the Pacheco kind of timeline trajectory in Dynasty, which can be really tricky because those guys don't have the draft capital to kind of like keep their value year over year. So I'm not sure that I would be so confident to move for him in Dynasty with a 2nd round rookie pick. There's not a lot of good names that come to mind when I'm thinking about. I know I have a bunch of sells that I don't want on my team, like DeAndre Swift. Like I just don't want him on my team. So I could definitely get Croskey-Merritt with DeAndre Swift. They're both the bench players. I just like the long-term, season-long outlook more for Croskey-Merritt than I do for a guy like DeAndre Swift, who we could come back after the Bears bye week and think, is he even the starter in this backfield anymore? So that's a name that I would throw out. Just some type of depth piece, an extra wide receiver that you have. If you need running back help, I think Croskey-Merritt's a cheap guy to go after.
Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We know Tuesdays are for scouting the waiver wire. Once you're done finding your diamond in the rough, maybe with the FantasyPros waiver planner, head on over to Hard Rock Bet. See what your new players' odds are to score another touchdown or double down and take the over on their yardage total this week. Week 5 doesn't start till Thursday, but there's always something to bet on. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. There's new promos every day, so if you're listening to this later, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit today. Erickson, give me a running back to sell.
Just mentioned his name as a potential piece to get. Croskey-Merritt would be DeAndre Swift. The Bears' rushing attack, to be polite, maybe this isn't the best way to describe it. It's been anemic, I would say. I was looking at I glanced at the first half box score, and it was just absolutely atrocious for them against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Swift did end up scoring a touchdown in that game, played 66% of the snaps, but he's just doing exactly what he did last year. He's just been very inefficient as a rusher, and he's getting by on volume and a little bit of that receiving juice. So he does offer that receiving as a little bit of a floor, which I think helps him avoid any type of total fallout, but I just think that the Bears are primed to revamp this running game. I think that we're going to see the Bears offense look a lot different when we come out of the bye week. Ben Johnson has a sample size to work with. I think he's going to make the changes that he wants with his offensive personnel to get the guys that he actually wants out there with the most touches. So whether that's Kyle Monangai taking a larger role, maybe they sign a running back, because what they're doing right now has been terrible. DeAndre Swift, through 4 weeks, has the 9th worst rushing success rate, 3.3 yards per carry. He's bottom 10 in PFF rushing grade. Yes, he scored in week 4. Use that as a reason, along with his receiving usage, to ship him off, because I think that he's overvalued as a quote-unquote workhorse in the Bears' backfield, which is, when you just look at the touches and the snap counts, like, technically that's kind of what he has been, but the red zone role is usually not there for him, and I just think that this Bears offense is going to look a little bit different. So Swift has always been a mid to low fantasy RB2 throughout his career. He's never been better, really never been worse. So if you can get something more than that, or maybe a chase at more of upside, even if you're carrying a little bit more risk, kind of like a Croskey-Merritt, yes, there's more risk involved with him, but Swift, yeah, he's a back-end fantasy RB2 at best, and I don't think that's going to change. So for me, he would be a sell.
If you look at his fantasy finish amongst running backs every year of his career in half PPR scoring, RB18, RB19, RB22, RB23, RB19. This year so far, it's RB24. It is technically the worst, but basically in that exact range that he always is. He is, assuming health, I do think a rare floor player, because we've seen it very consistently from him. It's just the ceiling's not there, and floors do not win fantasy championships for you. There are specific situations where it might be more important, just given the makeup of the rest of your roster and the state of your team and your record and all that, where having a floor is valuable. But for most fantasy managers this early in the season, I think aiming for a ceiling that we know is not there for Swift is probably smarter, Erickson.
Yeah, you can find RB2. The easiest production to replace on your roster is RB2. And that's what DeAndre Swift is offering you. So you can take a swing for the fences with a more boom or bust type of player than just kind of riding the floor of DeAndre Swift the rest of the way. I don't think he's going to be the reason that you win your league. And for those reasons, I feel like you can try to either package him with another player to try to ship him off, or get someone to kind of not necessarily overpay, but if you're getting better than RB2 fantasy value for Swift in a trade, then I would take it.
Yeah. Who's your other running back to sell?
I think I had this guy on the show last week, Tony Pollard, because it's just the same thesis of the play. The volume has been really solid for Tony Pollard without Tajay Spears in the lineup. The receiving was a little bit better last week, but in the sample size we have of 4 games with Cam Ward, the Titans are 32nd in terms of targets, passes to running backs this season. So Spears has activated his practice window, 21 days to return from the injured reserve. So if he comes back, I expect this backfield is going to be more of a committee. And then you're going to be losing Pollard's volume, which has been kind of keeping him afloat in one of the worst offenses in the NFL with the Tennessee Titans. So I don't know if the Titans are ever going to turn around with Callahan calling the shots. He gave up play calling duties this past week, and they scored 0 points. So he's running out of options to really fix this offense. We talked about the early show where Cam Ward talked about how bad there have been through 4 weeks. And even if it improves a little bit, could that be Tajay Spears making the offense better? I don't know. I just think going back to ceiling and floor, does Tony Pollard have a ceiling that you're going to regret giving up on after 4 weeks? Probably not. So again, another player that I'm fine shipping off the floor for to try to get someone with a little bit more upside, even if they carry a little more risk.
If you're looking for a pattern in Erickson's running backs to sell, I mean, it's basically a veteran running back who's ranked in the mid-20s. I mean, it's Pollard and Swift are RB25, RB27, and the guys that he's interested in this range are the rookies or second-year players, the Hendersons, Skattebos, Harveys. Those are the guys in the mid-20s. But if you're in the mid-20s and you're not a young guy with conceivable upside, sell, according to Erickson.
I think that's a good point to bring up because that's typically where, in draft season, those are where the dead zone running backs are, right? And I think that's a good point to bring up, that just because we're in season now, the dead zone still exists. Like, dead zone running backs are still a thing, and they look a lot like DeAndre Swift
the in-season
and Tony
dead
Pollard.
zone. Yes, exactly. You should write an article on that. All right, let's do buy, sell, or hold running back trios here. I've got 3 trios for you. First one, Cam Skattebo, Jordan Mason, Quinshon Judkins. Again, that's Skattebo, Mason, and Judkins. And remember, this isn't a ranking. This is 1 to buy, 1 to sell, 1 to hold.
Excellent trio worm. You've outdone yourself with this one because you're making me sell Jordan Mason, which I hate to do because he was definitely one of the biggest guy, and I have him on a ton of leagues. But just looking at the situation with him, they have a tough matchup this week internationally against the Cleveland Browns, and then they go on a bye week. And then they have another tougher matchup. So then Aaron Jones is going to come back. So once the schedule looks like it's going to lighten up for Jordan Mason, also you have to consider the Vikings are dealing with a ton of injuries on their offensive line. I don't know if you're going to reap the rewards of Mason without Aaron Jones until it's too late, when Jones returns, and then the schedule gets easier. So for those reasons, I think Mason would be my sell from this trio of running backs. Skattebo would be the buy for me. He's just a full-blown workhorse running back for the Giants. I'm not concerned about whether Tyrone Tracy comes back or not. I just don't think he's going to be a factor. I think that they've shown us we love Skattebo. You love Skattebo. I love Skattebo. We are Cam Skattebo. So you want to buy Cam Skattebo, just a full 3-down workhorse running back. And then Judkins is going to be a hold for me because I can't confidently say or give advice with him just based on or to buy or sell because there's a chance he could still get suspended. And if I tell you to go buy Quinshon Judkins and he gets suspended for the fantasy playoffs, like that's a terrible move to make. But if he doesn't get suspended at all, then you feel like a genius. So for me, Judkins, if you have him, I think he's just a hold for me because I don't feel confident like trying to maneuver my way to acquire him or trade him away because there's just a lot of question marks with the suspension thing, whether it happens or not. I think his value can kind of fluctuate depending on where he's owned in your league. But for that reason, yeah, that's why he's a hold.
I want to point out on Skattebo, I don't disagree with your decision. He gets the Saints this week. The next 3 games after that are Philly, at Denver, at Philly. So there might be some tougher sledding coming up here in the next month after week 5 before the schedule lightens up again. And if you see that, I wouldn't panic if you have him. Maybe, I mean, that's a long time to wait to trade for somebody and say, oh, wait a month and then do this. But it's possible the value will start to look maybe a little bit lower after that stretch of 3 games back to back to back. So just pointing that out. Next, running back trio, although I don't even know if I should do another one since apparently that first one is so perfect. Next one, Woody Marks, coming off of his breakout game, RJ Harvey, and Zach Charbonnet. Buy, sell, or hold Woody Marks, RJ Harvey, Zach Charbonnet.
I like buying RJ Harvey. I think that's probably the player I would look to buy just based on, we talked about it earlier with Dobbins, how he's not really a player that's built to last. And I think that we're going to continue to see Harvey's role grow in this Broncos backfield. I think that he's probably, I don't know if he's cheaper to get than Woody Marks. I mean, Woody Marks is a waiver wire guy, so he's probably not cheaper. Marks would probably be the hold for me just because I think that his role in this Texans offense is ascending. Joe Mixon, they said on the broadcast, they still have no timetable on when he's not coming back, guys. He's not coming back. So I don't think that Nick Chubb is going to completely go away, but I think that Marks is carving out a big enough role where, especially as a pass catcher out of the backfield, that he's going to be a fantasy usable asset. And then I guess selling Zach Charbonnet, if you can sell him off the fact that he got the touchdown, he's the back to own in Seattle. I don't really think that's the case. I still think it is Kenneth Walker, but it's a 1A, 1B kind of situation with the Seahawks. They like to use both guys. I would point out, though, because Seattle is so run heavy that even if they are using 2 running backs, both of them can technically still have fantasy value because they don't throw the ball at anybody else except JSN at this point, and then they just feature the 2 running backs. So that would kind of be my breakdown.
Last trio here, Bhayshul, Tuten, Isiah, Pacheco, Rhamondre, Stevenson.
I'm going to buy Bhayshul, Tuten. I think that the Jaguars have really favorable. I know. I'm staying very much on brand here. Buying Bhayshul, Tuten. I like the second half schedule for the Jaguars. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury too, so I think that his snaps have kind of been lowered because of that. They've been kind of keeping him in check, but I do think that he gets unlocked a little bit farther down the stretch of the season. Pacheco, I don't know what you can get for Pacheco. He would be the guy I would definitely try to sell, though. They're just trying to get any other running back more involved in this Chiefs backfield. And although he did have a glimpse of kind of old Pacheco self on one run, he's just not seeing enough volume to really be fantasy viable. So he would probably be the self-man. Who was the last running back you listed?
Rhamondre.
I guess Rhamondre is the hold for me because you're going to get even less for him than you would get for Isiah Pacheco. And I think that the hive is so strong for Travion Henderson that Stevenson probably is never going to be appropriately valued. So I think that he's probably just worth holding on to because he had the worst game you could ask for running back 2 weeks ago. And then he went back and led the team snaps the next week. Mike Vrabel still is committed to Rhamondre Stevenson in some capacity. Like they're still giving him starter snaps and starter reps. So he's going to continue to be involved in the Patriots backfield unless he gets hurt. He already fumbled twice. Like how many more fumbles is it going to take Mike Vrabel to set him on the bench? I'm not exactly sure. So yeah, he would probably just be the hole for me.
Don't forget about our weekly trade live stream on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask your specific fantasy trade questions. We'll be with you every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. For those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of all of our weekly live streams. That was our running backs, buys, and sells. Be sure to check out our wide receivers and a little bit of quarterback and tight end sprinkled in as well. Episode coming later on audio and on YouTube. For Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.